Hello, this is Tony Riggs with GoEngineer. Recently we've been getting all kinds of questions about SOLIDWORKS functionality when it comes to dealing with STL files for reverse engineering. So we've got a bunch of new tools in SOLIDWORKS 2018, 2019, and 2020 that we're going to take a look at. So the first thing we're going to look at are some options. And I'm going to come down to the import area. And right now I've got Enable 3D Interconnect turned off. But also for the STL options, I've got it set to come in as a graphics body. And we need to pay attention to the units as well. Make sure it comes in the right size. When it comes to opening up the STL file, we've got some options. If I come down here and look, I've got some scan to 3D mesh files and point cloud files. Those are going to be for the scan to 3D add-in that we've had for a while. We're actually going to come up and use the mesh file options for STLs and open up this machined part. Let's see how it comes into our system. So it's going to come in as a graphics body. We've got some options when dealing with STL files. One of the new options is the decimate mesh body. So if we've got a large facet count, we've got the ability to reduce that. Maybe we would do that if we're going to use this file and go ahead and put it into an assembly file or something like that, and actually use the STL file as is. But when we're coming down to reverse engineering, I typically want to keep as much data from the STL file as possible. Another interesting option is to come in and use the section view tool. Now we're going to get a message saying, we can only do certain things as a graphics body. So it will actually go in and allow us to section through the graphics body. But once we say OK to the section view, that's really only there for the solid bodies. So it's not going to be as useful until we get a few solid bodies going on. So just a couple tools with dealing with the STL file as we get started. Now, when it comes to reverse engineering, how do we get started on this part? Now, we're kind of lucky with this part. When it was scanned, it was aligned fairly nicely with the front plane. The top plane kind of runs down through there. But let's imagine that we don't have those planes or our part aligned quite nicely yet. We're going to take a look at how we might deal with that as we get started. So the first tool we're going to use is the creation of a surface from the mesh body. And we've got options for planar surfaces and spherical surfaces, cylindrical surfaces, on over to conical surfaces. And we can come in and select our seed facets. We've got some tools here to paint the facets. But if we right-click out in space, we can paint the selected facets. We'll do that first. Later on, we'll come in and use this tangent select facets option. So for the paint selected facets, I can come in, I can kind of control the size of the paintbrush. And for me, I'm going to come in and just kind of paint a little bit in the middle of our part here. Places where we may know that we've got some nice smooth data. We can come in and change the facet tolerance with a higher tolerance, a little bit closer result when we calculate this. And we've got the ability to extend and oversize the surface once we create it. For now, we'll leave it as is. So if we hit calculate, we can come in. This may take a little bit of time as it goes through and it's trying to average out the data in on that face, basically, to generate a nice flat face for us. Now, nice flat faces are going to be useful later on to create sketches and do some other things with. And we'll create a similar surface on the other side of the part with the tangent option. So we'll say OK to this. And then we're going to go over and rotate to the other side and do the same thing again. Give this a few more seconds to finish up, and we should be good. There we go. So do a surface from mesh, planar surface as well. This time we'll use the tangent select facets. And I'm going to pick that area right there. Now the 15 degrees lets us wrap around a little bit more than we probably want. I'm going to go with maybe a 2-degree angle. Cleans that up a little bit. Say OK to that. And check the green check mark to go ahead and say OK and calculate to create the surfaces. Now, when it comes to creating these surfaces, it's coming in, kind of taking an average of the distance around the different facets. And we've told it we want a flat face, so that's kind of nice. But we're going to take a look at, what kind of information we're going to get from this data. We're going to use the measure tool to come in and see what we can do. If we come in and hide the graphics body, there's our two surfaces. And we can come in and take that face and maybe the front plane that we've got. Maybe use the evaluate tool and measure that. So the angle there is 0.13 degrees. And then if we go from the front plane over to this surface, we're at 0.14 degrees. So we're not quite square with the world. So let's see what we can do. If we can kind of ignore the front plane, we can actually use some tools to create a brand new plane. And we'll use that face and that face. And the option that this is going to give us is this mid-plane option. And we'll use that plane from here on out to do any mirroring and to get started on a few things. On this face right here, we're going to come in and start a sketch. And I'm going to draw a point. And then I'm going to rotate over to the other side. And on this flat face, start another sketch and add another point. And I'm just picking right there on the origin. If we know we've got a place where we've got some good data, we can use that. But we've got a nice flat face there. So what are we going to do? I'm going to come in and use this plane 1, and maybe I'll go ahead and rename this plane to be a mid-plane, because we're going to use that later on. And I'm going to do just a control drag on that plane. That gets us started into the plane tool, but I'm going to use that point that I drew, and I'm going to do an offset plane through a point. So we've got a nice flat face out here to sketch from. From there, I'm going to come in, I'm going to hide my surfaces, and we're not going to use them too much anymore. Do need to come back in and show the graphics body. So now on this plane number 2, I can start a sketch, and I'm going to start sketching the general shape of my part here. Now I got a couple different ways to do this. We'll play with a few of them. I've got different options for the circle tool, just a regular circle, the perimeter circle. So I might do the perimeter circle on this one. And I can actually zoom in. You can actually see it kind of snapping to the mesh data. I want to get out to a point where I'm out on the outer surface. Got a place where I've got some nice smooth data. Snap it right there. And that's going to be a nice shape for that circle there. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and draw a line here. Now, its shape right now isn't super important, because I'm going to come in and take that point and the circle, make them coincident, and then that line and the circle, I want it to be tangent. And then I can come in, I can grab this point and kind of get it close to my geometry right there. Now down here on the bottom, this is kind of nice and flat. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a nice horizontal line and come back and put a point on my line. And I'm going to use that point, I'm going to drag it up, kind of snap it to the geometry right there. And then on the side, maybe I come in and use a tangent arc or a 3-point arc. I got a couple different options that I can use here. For a 3-point arc, again, I'll get it kind of close, and I'll go in and that point and that circle coincident, and then that and that tangent. And now I can come in and I'll drag this around, get it kind of close to my shape. Something about like that. Now down here at the bottom, I could go in and draw some additional 3-point arcs, tangent arcs, that type of thing. But I'm going to come over and use the sketch fillet tool. And I'm going to pick on that line and that line. So we've got some relationships probably from where I sketched my bottom line there. I'm going to go ahead and continue with that. And then that one and that one. Same thing. So I can come in and reduce the shape there. It actually looks really pretty good right at this 0.7 inch size. So I'll go with that. And then all I really need to do is come in and use the trim tool to trim off that extra piece, and I can go from there. Now, I drew this out on the outer surface so I could extrude it over to the other side. Sometimes we might want to take advantage of symmetry. So I could have started sketching on this mid-plane. The problem is with the mid-plane extrusion, the only option I have is a distance. Here with a sketch out on this side, if I extrude it, I can actually use an up to vertex end condition and generate that original shape this way. So we're on our way to generate these guys. I can come in and hide some of these planes now. We don't need to see them that much for a while. Okay, so what do we do next? There's a couple different cutouts down here at the base. If we look at the graphics body, we're going to come in and see what we can do with those. So we're going to be kind of continually bouncing back and forth, hiding and showing the graphics body and the solid body so we can see what's going on. So for now, we'll come in and hide the solid body. And we're going to come in on the right plane and start another sketch. And maybe I'm going to come in and draw a nice line, a nice vertical line. And then I'll draw a tangent arc down here. And I'm just going to pull this line over till it kind of matches up with that. And we're going to pull this arc down and get it kind of close. So we're just kind of seeing what we can do with the size of our part there. Come back and show the solid body again, and we'll do an extruded cut through all in both directions. We just need to make sure to flip the side to cut so that the arrow is coming outwards, and we'll cut off the side of that part. With that cut and the midplane, we can go ahead and mirror that to the other side. And now we're looking a little bit closer to our shape that we want to replicate. Again, on the right plane, we'll come in and start another sketch. And we'll see what we can do with this body. Hide it again, maybe. And we're going to come in and draw this shape down here. So here's another technique. I'm going to draw a little rectangle. Again with the points. There, there, and there. And we'll use that point to kind of snap to some of the geometry there. Pull this guy up to about there. Okay. Now we do have that midplane, so we could be using some symmetry relationships if we wanted to. But we'll just snap it for now. Sketch fillet again. That one and that one, those are going to be a little bit too big, so let's run the size down a little bit. Now we can see both of them. And we're just getting it kind of close. So somewhere close to 1/4 inch radius. Now we don't care that the line there at the bottom is hanging out below the part, because we're just going to do another through all cut. Through all cut in both directions. Okay. So now we've got a couple more things to do on our part. We've got another tombstone shaped cutout up here on the top of the part. And we've got a nice little surface here we can start a sketch on. So we can start a sketch and draw the, the rectangle with the fillets again, but I'm going to show you a little bit different way of doing this next thing. So on the Mesh Modeling tab, we don't have the slicing tool there by default. It's actually in another area. So let's look at what we can do. I'm going to come over here to the search commands, and I'm going to type in slice. And there's our slicing tool. It's a nice way of finding the tool. If I click on it right here, it's going to start up the command. If I click on the eyeball, it's going to show me where the command's at. But if I want this on my toolbar, I can actually just drag it right onto the toolbar from that search tool, and I don't have to do the search anymore. Okay, so I'm going to come in on this face and use the slicing tool. Now it gives me this little bounding box. I'm going to change the shape a little bit and pull it up. Now I want to reverse the direction, and I can come in and do a number of different slices. You can see the different planes where it would slice through the part. So this is fairly similar to some of the tools in the Scan to 3D option, but these are just in regular SOLIDWORKS. But I do want to come in and I'm going to hide the solid body, so I don't actually want to slice it. And I really only need 2 slices, and I'm going to come in with an offset distance. I've got some places here where I've got some data that's not so good, but I'm really just kind of trying to generate that those lines there. If I look at about 0.13, there's some good data there. Now I do have the option to turn on the preview slices. It does take a little bit longer. I'm going to come in and turn off the exact option. If I do this, think of a convert entities, but it's going to give me little lines for every facet that it hits. If I turn off the exact, it's going to give me some spline data. Circles and rectangles will kind of give us some bounding boxes and just general circular shapes from the sketch. We don't need those in this particular example. And we'll go ahead and say OK to this. There's an option there to add the slicing plane and sketches to a folder. So if you've got a bunch of slices, it's nice, and will give us a nice compact set of data for the slice information that we're generating here. So it's going through, and everywhere this plane hits the part, it's going to try to give us some data for where those planes hit things. So let's take a look at the information. If we can kind of maybe hide that mesh data for a second. This very first sketch is right there on that outer surface. We really don't need it, so I'm going to come in and just hide that. But then we've got some pretty decent data there on the cutout for our part. I'm going to come back in and show the solid body. Instead of using that sketch, I'm actually going to come out on this flat face, start a sketch, and this is very similar to what we've done so far. I'm going to come in and I'm going to take that edge and that spline, make it tangent, that edge and that spline, and make it tangent, and that edge and that spline, and make it tangent. So it definitely does kind of depend on the data as far as how well this is going to work. We've got a coincident there. Yeah, maybe we don't want that. We can drag that up a little bit. Sketch fillet on that edge. And I want to pick that line. Let's go with that point right there and that one right there. So the nice thing about this, we can grab the little yellow line right there and we can adjust the size if we want it to be different, but that one comes out pretty good right at 1/4 of an inch. So we can say OK to that. And from there, once again, we'll just do an extruded cut through all. Okay, so we're looking pretty good, but how good are we when it comes to the original data? So there's a nice tool that can let us do some comparison. So the body compare tool. So how do we do this? We're going to come in and look for our source body. That's going to be the graphics body. And then the body we want to compare to is just one of our solid bodies here. And so we can come in and take a look at the area. So we got some pockets and some holes that still aren't there. But our data here is looking pretty good up on the one end, but then we've got some interesting blue areas right there. So there may be an assumption that I gave us that may be hurting us a little bit. Maybe that cut doesn't quite follow through in that exact direction. So let's turn off the body compare and let's see what we can do. I'm going to come in and hide the solid body and show the graphics body here. And so this may come down at a slightly different angle. So I'm going to do another surface from mesh, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint this surface through here with the paint selected area, and I'm just going to generate a face there and say OK. So I want a nice flat face along the bottom of this ridge. And what I'm going to do on that flat face is I'm going to come in and I'm going to start a sketch, and I'm going to draw a line. So be nice and horizontal there. So that line is going to give me a direction for my extruded cut. Okay. So if I come in and look at this extruded cut, my surface, I'm going to reorder these things above the cut extrude, and take my sketch up as well because I need them to both exist. So right now that's kind of trying to pull it into the slice folder. I can hold down the Alt key and put it right above it. Edit the definition of my cut extrude. So instead of it being normal to the sketch, I'm going to come in and use that line that I drew. You can see it angle ever so slightly differently downward. Okay, come in and maybe hide that sketch. Now when we do the body compare, imported body, the solid body here. Come back and show our solid body. It's going to look a little bit better. Now I've got some options here with the body compare. We've got some unmatched colors, where we run into areas where we're greater than a certain distance. I can come in and control the tolerance, come down to 0.03, that type of thing. And we can see that we're matching up things a little bit better now. We still got some holes and some pockets to take care of, but that gets us a ways into our part. Let's turn that body compare back off. So far, so good. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at how we can put some of these holes in our part. So I'm going to rotate around a little bit and maybe use this back side over here. I'm going to come in and hide the solid body. And we're going to use one of the tools to help get us started. Surface from mesh again. This time we're going to go with a cylindrical surface. And we can use the tangent select facets. Let's go ahead and bump that down to about 3 degrees. And we can come in and pick some additional faces on here. Just the more the better to kind of average out. We want to make sure we got some good data there. And we can go in and hit calculate. You have options to do the extended surface size. Depending on the surface that it creates, it may be easy to extend it. Just kind of depends on the geometry. So we've got a little surface we can kind of see there. Let's look at another thing that we can do to help us, create these holes. Might be from the Features tab and the Axis. So just like that cylindrical surface, is going to have a temporary axis. We can make a real axis here. Now, if we come to the cylindrical conical face option, there's actually now a paint select facets. And we can come in here and pick some of the data there, flip around to the bottom side. Just add some more points to help us with the value. And now we've got an axis running through there. Now that axis, we may have to be careful with it. Just like we saw that the angled faces on the surfaces we created right from the beginning were at a slight angle, this axis may not be perpendicular to our midplane, so we may have to just use it to go in and help us locate, a concentric hole to put in the part. Now in this particular geometry, I would probably go in and put the holes on this side in first because they're smaller and we can get them created, and then for the larger holes on the other side, they're just going to be concentric on that other face or plane, and we're just going to have to really just define the diameter and the location, and it should be fairly easy, similar to what we've done with many of the other cutouts that we've done already. Now here in our pocket, it kind of depends on the data that we've got here. Let's see how this works. We'll come in and use the surface from mesh, go back over to a planar surface, and we've got the ability to either paint the selected facets, and here maybe we bump up the diameter size a little bit so we can paint a little bit faster. So this kind of all depends on the data that we've got. So let's see how this works. Now with this surface, we can either start a sketch on this flat face or extrude up to that flat face. And we're basically drawing lines here and arcs based on the mesh data, just like we've done before. I like the idea of drawing single lines and using the sketch fillet tool again to kind of round off the corners, and that should be fairly easy to do. So whether we come in and use the snapping to the mesh data, get it fairly close. Something like that. Now we snap to initial points there. If we come in and remove one of those, then we could take that line and force it to be horizontal. Take off one of these relationships. Make that one vertical, just as a design intent idea. And then the sketch fillet, from there to there, and there to there. So those are those relationships it's kind of extending. So it looks like the nice consistency of the 1/4 inch fillet that works pretty good on this one. So we're there at that end. Come back in and show our solid body. Do an extruded cut. Come out this way, say through all. Now we've got our cut there. Go ahead and hide that surface as well. We need a fillet down there in the bottom edge. How big do we want that to be? And then we'll take that cutout and the fillet and our midplane, and we can mirror that to the other side. We've been working in shaded mode so far, shaded with edges. Gets us a little bit better look at the part. We've got maybe another surface there we can hide and clean up. But we're getting fairly close to matching up with our graphics body. There's all the different facets that are there. Looks like we've got one small little chamfer kind of all around the part that we could add to help match that up. And we're just adding some small little details to finish things up. So I hope this explanation of some of the tools that we can use with our mesh data is going to be helpful for you. And again, this is Tony Riggs with GoEngineer, and I hope you enjoyed this video.